Phil Isenberg is chair of the Delta Stewardship Council. Previously, he served as a Sacramento City Council member and mayor and as a member of the California State Assembly. He holds a Doctor of Jurisprudence from the University of California, Bolt Hall School of Law, and a Bachelor of Arts in Social Science and Government from California State University, Sacramento. He previously served as chair of the California Marine Life Protection Act Blue Ribbon Task Force and as chairman of the Delta Vision Blue Ribbon Task Force. The recommendation of the Delta Vision Task Force provided much of the structure of the significant Delta policy changes adopted by the legislature in 2009 and signed into law by Governor Schwarzenegger. Mr. Isenberg was appointed by Governor Schwarzenegger to a 6-year term on the Delta Stewardship Council and elected chair of the council by his colleagues. Please welcome him warmly.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here, and somewhere in the audience is Felicia Marcus, one of my colleagues on the, there she's sitting there looking innocent, or trying to look innocent in the midst of this discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here. I am honored to have this opportunity, as I did at the last conference in Sacramento in 2010. First of all, a quibble. The caption of my speech in the program is Achieving the Co-Equal Goals of the Delta Plan. Au contraire. The co-equal goals are state law. They are not imposed by the Delta Plan. When the legislature and the governor passed a 5-bill water package in 2009, they incorporated the co-equal goals into statute. Not as a legislative finding, not as a declaration of good purposes to be ignored, but as a statutory declaration, and I'll read it to you just so you understand what we're talking about. Co-equal goals means the two goals of providing a more reliable water supply for California and protecting, restoring, and enhancing the Delta ecosystem. The co-equal goals shall be achieved in a manner that protects and enhances the unique cultural, recreational, natural resources, and agricultural value of the Delta as an evolving place. That's the law. Now, I say this because it is a challenge to all of the water warriors of California, including myself when I was a politician, who spend our time arguing that our side, our positions, our constituents, are more important than anyone else in the state of California, and whatever we prefer must be the policy of the state to the exclusion of everyone else. Co-equal goals requires the water development community and requires the environmental community and an array of public servants and scientists who are involved in those issues to pay attention to both of the values. After all, what does the word co-equal mean if it does not mean that? The cornerstone of the co-equal goals adopted by statute is how they apply to covered actions, a portion of the state law that essentially says state and local agencies, as defined in the law, have covered actions that have to be consistent with the Delta Plan. And the state, and I'll talk about this a bit later, the state also adopted statutory policy that indicates that to deal with future water needs, there shall be decreased reliance on the Delta as a source of water. Now, in the past 5 years, while I chaired the Delta Vision process for Governor Schwarzenegger and now at the Delta Council, I've learned a lot of things, but the one lesson that is constantly in my mind as I go through this stuff is our water supply and how we use water is interconnected in everything we do in every part of the state, and there is no way to isolate decisions and pretend that they do not affect others. If one city does a wonderful and remarkable job on conserving water, that has tangible benefits that ripple out. If another city does zip, that has tangible harm that ripples out. This notion of an interconnected water supply is useful, I think, as we discuss the future. Now, virtually all of those who've come to the Delta Stewardship Council in the last 16 months have said the status quo is unacceptable. They have also said, yep, Delta ecosystem's in decline. Yep, no doubt about it. But all of these people who are not happy with the status quo fear change. They prefer change that serves their policy choices and no one else's. And my view, of course, is that in life and in government and in public policy, change happens anyway. The question is whether you can try to nudge it, adjust it, make it more rational. The old analogy that doesn't quite work but's not bad. Do you want a soft landing of the airplane, or would you prefer to crash just because you feel better? So the statute said that by January 1st, 2012, we have to develop, adopt, and commence implementing a Delta plan. A schedule so fast that even youngster Felicia Marcus is complaining occasionally about the pace of our activity, and all those who fear that we might do something they don't like are demanding we take more time. There is something quite useful about taking a battle that's been going on for 161 years in one form or another about water, human purposes, the environment in which we find ourselves, and actually trying to produce a report on time. That's one of my goals, to be a guy who works in a state agency that actually comes close to meeting a deadline. So let me give you some context first and then talk about a couple issues. First, on context. Our state water supply is under stress. The stress is going to continue. If you were here yesterday for the opening presentations, this is no news. The water supply is increasingly volatile. Climate changes, the amount of precipitation changes, the date of heaviest runoff changes. All those things you heard about yesterday present immensely complicated management decisions and dilemmas for water system operators and for those who are trying to restore or maintain ecosystem. How you do it, the way you do it, it seems to me, is an honest puzzle. But there is no doubt about the fact that our water supply system is not as reliable as it once was, A, because of age, and B, simply because the assumptions we used to plan and build the dams, the conveyance systems, and the assumptions we used about weather and climate and supply that led us to sign water contracts or water agreements or anything else are out of date. Our water supply is finite, it's not growing very much, demand continues to grow. The state water project reliability is declining, which has surprised no one. If you drive on a freeway that's 10 years old, it's usually going to be better than a freeway that's 25 years old. Just the simple mechanics that we cannot build for eternity and expect it to work. We build projects that have to be renewed and restored. Our economy is growing. The amount of water humans use overall is growing, although there's some positive sign that per capita use has finally started to decline in America and California, although that decline is uneven. Doesn't occur in all places, doesn't occur consistently. I like to say that we annually use more water every year than nature provides, but that's too controversial, so Jerry made me promise not to say that again, so naturally I won't. But here's the thing. If you have a water supply system, you try to work this out so that your portfolio of supplies allows you to get through hard times. That's what it's about. That's why you have a savings account. If you draw down your savings account every year just simply because you want to spend money, you don't have a savings account anymore. You have a one-time pot of money that you use up over a period of time. More and more as the population grows, our dilemma is that our storage, whether underground or surface storage, is increasingly used in dry water years and average water years. I mean, it no longer is just a disaster bank you're waiting to use in the driest years. So it seems to me that the dilemma we face in water is very similar to the dilemma we face on government and government budgets. And you may not think this is true, but I'll tell you why it is. In the budget battle in America and California, the issues, you know what the slogans are. No tax can ever be increased, no program can ever be cut. Well, nobody knows how to make that work. The short-term solution is go borrow money. But after a while, you can't borrow money anymore. And of course, if you get into a big recession, the tensions are even greater. It is very similar to the water stuff. If you continue to act as if water is always available in the supply you want, and there's no reason to be very serious about conservation or efficiencies, and if somehow the supplies you store up underground and surface storage are available any old time anybody wants it, you have a guaranteed crisis that everybody knows about. It's just a question of when it comes. Now, the Delta ecosystem is in decline. We all know that. The species have been in decline for over a century. The amount of water that flows through the Delta is declining. Ironically, of course, the political debate blames that all on the exporters, but the fact of the matter is the Delta watershed users, as was discussed yesterday, Delta watershed users use substantially more water than the exporters. But we don't like to say that because people like me made my political career on blaming Southern California for everything because it was fun and it worked. And it's reached its useful end of its life. The habitats in the Delta have been largely lost, and ironically, no good deed goes unpunished. As we're going to restore more of them, sea level rise will threaten the achievements we will make. And in spite of all of the fact, all these Delta scientists, the Stewardship Council that are sitting out here, they say, well, we'll work that out. And I say, how? And they say, we don't know yet, but trust us. Right, Lauren? Or trust us. There's a discussion now about stressors, and that's everybody's favorite candidate for what should be done first to help the Delta ecosystem. So, let's go upstream pollution, ag runoff, the Sacramento Regional County Sanitation Plant and ammonium, striped bass, let's kill striped bass to help salmon. Whatever the popular stressor of the moment is, it's out there. They are, in fact, factors that have to be considered. But the danger, it seems to me, is to fall in the trap of Americans who always want to find the one evil person or reason that explains every problem in the world. And if you go after that person or that activity or that fish species or whatever it is, gee, you can leave me alone. I can use all the water I want. I can have all the money I want. Make him or her or it pay the cost. I think all of us have a duty to participate in this process because it's very much, for those of you who are old enough, there must be 10 of you in the audience who were around for the first Earth Day in 1971, and you might recall the poster that was the starting poster. It was from Walt Kelly, the Pogo cartoon strip. And, it's Pogo saying, we have met the enemy and he is us. And looking in the mirror might be a better way to start dealing with some of these problems than trying to find the one person you dislike the most and blaming that person. The Delta is inherently flood prone. Nothing anyone can do about it, and no level of flood protection will totally solve that problem. The Delta ecosystem and a reliable water supply system does relate to flood protection within the Delta, but ironically it does not lead to the creation of a Dutch-like armored barrier with levees 500 feet tall to protect the existing status quo, because as you know, as ecologists, the channelization of our rivers, the destruction of the habitat has a considerable impact on the ecosystem we serve. That's kind of the context, and it's not unusual to all of you who spend your life in the field. I want to talk about three things the legislation did that are important, are controversial in the Delta plan. The statute said decrease reliance on water in the future. Here's what the statute says. The policy of the state of California is to reduce reliance on the Delta in meeting California's future water supply needs through a statewide strategy of investing in improved regional supplies, conservation, and water use efficiency. Each region that depends on water from the Delta watershed shall improve its regional self-reliance for water through investments in water use efficiency, water recycling, advanced water technology, local and regional water supply projects, and improved regional coordination. Here's what we're doing in the Delta Plan about this, and this is probably one of our more significant actions. When parties, state agencies, or local agencies have a covered action, they must demonstrate the following in order for us to judge that they're consistent with the plan. They have to demonstrate that they have complied with their own urban and agricultural water management plans. it will not surprise you that some water districts are unenthusiastic with actually complying with what they have promised to do. Number two, demonstrate how they'll continue to operate if there's an interruption in the Delta water supply of up to 36 months. I mean, it's time to have an honest discussion in California about what you do if this catastrophic failure in the Delta actually occurs. We don't know whether the answers will be clear and sufficient. But if you don't ask that question and force people to deal with it, you can be damn sure that we'll be in chaos should it happen. The effort of Metropolitan Water District of Southern California 2 years ago to actually, in advance, announce where reductions would occur if water supplies were reduced was one of the most civilizing discussions I've seen in the water world in my career. We would all do well to emulate it. In addition, they have to come in and show, how do you plan to implement all these projects that you project in your urban water management plan? Give us 20 years of implementation. What's it like? Do you have a regional water balance? Are you talking about whether you have a realistic supply for realistic demands, or is it another one of these planning arrangements where you just say, well, we'll get all the water we need from X sources without doing an evaluation of it? And then last, by December 2020, a conservation-oriented water rate structure should be adopted. Now, to be sure that this deals with the co-equal goals, particularly the Delta ecosystem, we've told poor Fran Pavley and her colleagues on the water board, guys, you got to step up and do what you already want to do, which is set Delta water flow standards and stop fooling around and letting people delay the thing. Set Delta flow standards by 2014 and Delta tributary standards by 2018, which is a relative mirroring of statutory language. That's very hard for them to do because the decisions are deeply contentious when they engage in it. That's been the history of flow standards in the last 40 years. And more importantly, people who don't like the consequences of that seek to stop it. Change number two, significant. Bay Delta Conservation Plan, which you know about. Jerry's going to talk about that in detail later. The Delta Stewardship Council is a potential appellate body on some aspects of BDCP. In statute, it says, look, we're supposed to incorporate the BDCP plan into the Delta plan when it's finished if the Department of Fish and Game certifies that it's met the test of law that was established in 2009. But the decision of the Department of Fish and Game can be appealed to the council, just in one little tag-on sentence in the statute, which has caused no amount of commotion. But it's pretty clear, if we get an appeal from that, we can probably say yes, we can say it was not correct or it was correct. We can say we don't understand what you're saying here. We might ask some questions. We are not authorized to rewrite our own version of a BDCP. Statute doesn't do that. Now, a lot of people want us to do that, feeling that we might better serve the interests they care about, but that isn't what we were asked to do. All of which, this process the legislature set up, offends a lot of people who've spent their lives battling with each other for or against or just being puzzled by BDCP, because all the warring parties prefer that the council immediately declare our support of their entire agenda to the exclusions of everyone else. Now, there ain't no way in the world we're going to do that. There is no way we should do that. Cut it out. It's the law we're enforcing, not your particular interest on that subject. The fifth draft of the Delta Plan calls for speedy completion of the Bay Delta Conservation Plan. Now, I leave that for Jerry to talk to you about in detail, but personally, I'd like to, can you finish it in 2 months? You can say that, yeah. I'd actually like to see it finished. I think it is in the interest of honest public debate to see what a well-thought-out facility that is sized and priced and with operational rules is actually all about. Why do we want to hide those choices? We need facts to argue about, not abstract ideas. It's almost, in my judgment, it's almost impossible if you look to the year 2100, as our plan does, not to see that you're going to need major improvements, repair, maintenance, and all of that in the Delta facility. I don't see how you get by with that. just don't see. Is the Brown administration helping? Yeah, you bet. They did some semi-civilizing of the process, removing a loyalty oath that Jerry might talk about, all of which, once they've done it, they get no credit for. You do understand it? That's if you do it, we'll love you. But when you do it, God intended it to be done, you don't get any credit. And that's the way the world operates. Then the last thing. The statute said, scientists belly up to the bar and start drinking. I mean, it didn't say that quite like that, but the role of science is increasing in importance. The statute gives it much more elevated importance. It requires the Delta Plan to use the best available science, requires adaptive management and performance measures, all these stuff that you guys spend your life on, to be involved in this whole thing. And it's not easy to do. Now, have we succeeded? I know, give me 30 seconds and I'll wind up. The answer is partially. We have work to do on performance measures. But here's just a comment to all you scientists out there. Be careful what you ask for, you might get it. You want to be more important. You want to be central to the role. You'd like to have your opinion, your research prepared. Okay. I think the statute moves very clearly in the direction that whether for the ecosystem and over time the water supply system of California, you will be more involved. That requires you to think about both at the same time, not one. And the luxury in public debate is we always prefer to talk about one issue at one time. There are 5 vexing questions I like to leave for the end. Maybe I'll just answer questions about that. But this is a very difficult time in American society. Our budget problems, the economic turndown, all the things that we know about have essentially helped to create or accentuate what is a real division in American society. We do not seem to have common purposes that last much longer than 3 months or 6 months or 9 months. But the solution to major social problems require decades of effort, and the problem is how to start. Honor and pleasure to be here. I want to make one note. We are losing our lead scientist, Cliff Dahm, who is headed back to the University of New Mexico to do work. But he has been a remarkable contributor to our activity, and in his way, he says no to me more than anybody else, and I listen to it with great amusement because basically I don't like to be told no, but he's mostly right all the time, which it's distressing. It's distressing. There are people who do wonderful things and roles to be emulated. I'd commend Cliff Dahm as one of those people. Thank you very much.
Thank you.